to 6.
And we're live.
Hello.
Hello.
La, la, la. Hello, all. It is Thursday afternoon, Generational Change. I'm Jen.
I'm Peter, and we are kind of flying by the seat of our pants.
A little bit.
I think it's safe to say that.
A little bit, yeah.
And so when we come on, I wouldn't say at obscure times, but we're definitely doing this. It used to be that the podcast was the central focus, and now it's sort of secondary focus.
Well, it's just the schedule has changed a lot. My schedule has changed a lot. Today is a particularly crazy day.
Yes, it is a crazy day, and there is still a lot more to be done.
Yes.
Do we want to go to that?
At 7, we need to go.
Okay, so we need to go. Okay.
That one, I think we need to go to.
I will be going as a side, as an ornament.
As an ornament.
Yes.
Someone has to hold my purse.
I do a pretty good job of that. I know I don't do a lot of things, but the purse holding I can handle.
I have to say,
taking I can handle.
The funniest thing ever is that I would even say that just because the amount of things that we've been to where I see representatives, state legislator people, and their staff are holding their purse, and Debbie has a purse holder, and I remember. And it isn't just their job. It's not just purse holder. That is silly. But I remember sort of thinking, oh my God, imagine needing a purse holder. Now I understand you need a purse holder. I'm starting to get much more in with the pockets so that I won't necessarily need a purse, but it's really hard. It's really hard to find, That is definitely one of the benefit of some of these mosque functions is I get to wear big, loose clothing with deep pockets.
Well,
I don't have anything fitted. And so there's nothing fitted so I could have pockets. It is kind of a bonus to me.
One of the things that I've noticed, and the more you get into this, the more you realize that so much of the things that we think we know, the things that we have been so ingrained in our culture and our mindset for so many years, that so much of it is just not true.
Oh, yeah.
So much of it is just a lie. And
a lot of it is a lie.
There's a reason why, as I've been saying for a couple of years now, that especially since the dawn of COVID, that libertarianism has always been kind of boiling under the surface for a while, because a lot of people are just well aware of just how shiftless and corrupt our government is, because it's been corporate captured. What has happened over the last few years is that it's grown so exponentially that you've reached a point where there is a sizable chunk of the population that just doesn't believe anything that comes out of the government or corporate media's mouth. That anything
I'm in that group. I'm in that group.
Anything they say, just believe the complete opposite.
Yes.
So if they're telling you that what's going on in the Middle East and in Eastern Europe right now is a good thing, it means that it's really a bad thing.
Well, everything is the opposite of what they say. That's what I think. I automatically don't believe them.
Yeah,
I just don't.
And rightfully so. And as we've seen with everything that's going on right now, and I know that we'll be talking a lot, with Jesse and Tyrel. But the thing that was really interesting is that when push comes to shove, as we've been talking about quite often, the only way that any change actually happens is through grassroots, and in this case, grassroots labor movements that are unified across the country. There is no other way, because when you think about these supposed policies that we want to see enacted on Capitol Hill, you have people that will say that, oh, I'm totally for that. But when there's an opportunity to actually make a difference on a specific vote, like we saw the other day, they will always vote in favor of corporate special interests. That's the difference.
Yeah.
They'll say, oh, I'm totally for universal health care. But then if that actually became a floor vote, be like, yeah, but we don't have the money for it. We don't have the money.
We can't. How are you going to pay for that?
How are you going to pay for that? How are you going to pay for people not to die? You can't do that.
We can't pay for that.
We can pay to kill people. That's okay.
Well, but that's an investment.
That's an investment.
That's an investment in our military strength.
It is. Well, it's becoming a very lucrative. Well, remember, it's not our tax dollars. It is the money we print that is going over to the Middle East, and we are being taxed for it.
I prefer to call it our collective resources. Our collective resources as a nation are being sent over to, I hate even saying, to Israel at a level that
call it Israel Palestine.
It's like, I just don't even. Yeah. So we send more of our resources. We give them more than the entire continent of Africa. That we give them more than we give to the entire continent of Africa.
That seems pretty steep.
Let's think that through.
And think about how much
and when you think about a continent like Africa, where we're constantly being sold this, there's always a need for humanitarian, which there is. So we're always being told that, but yet we don't seem to be able to help them. And there's always reasons why we can't help them. So I just want everybody to wrap their heads around that we give Israel more than we give to the entire continent of Africa. That's insane.
I mean, isn't Israel the size of
New Jersey?
Yeah, I was going to say it's like the size of
New Jersey,
maybe like two major. No, I was going to say that'd probably be a little too small, but it's basically it's maybe a little little smaller than Morocco.
I'm telling you, it's about the size of New Jersey, and Gaza, as a point of reference, from my understanding, I believe was compared to the size of a city like Cleveland in terms of space. I don't know why somebody had used that reference, but if that works, if that explains this, I can envision that. So yeah, no, Israel is the size of New Jersey. And we give them more than the entire continent of Africa, which, by the way, is bigger than our maps even show that it is. It is. If you ever look up like the true map, not the one that we use, but the true map, the one wherein Africa is its actual size, most people's heads are blown.
And just so you guys know, and if you are paying close attention, which I'm sure you are, the social media onslaught is going to be coming Jen's way, and it's just beginning. And they are going to be vitriolic and nasty.
I'm scared.
They're going to be threatening too.
I'm not scared.
They will threaten. There's no question.
You know why I'm not scared? Because I don't see it, and I'm not on social media, so I don't have to know.
Well, I have to.
Well, that's your problem.
If they're aiming a cruise missile in your direction, I should tell you before.
Well, at a minimum, you should get out of the way.
Fine.
But no, look, I'm not. That's not what I don't read it, because the majority of it is so unreasonable and it's just nasty and emotional. And so it doesn't serve any purpose. Well, anybody who had anything constructive to say can always feel free to reach out and email me.
Well, here's where I'll push back on you, where I disagree. Because the difference is, with this particular sect of the society, you're talking about people that are of considerable affluence in a number of corners. And so as a result,
that's true.
What you will see, as you will see on our feed, are the ones coming on and saying, I am making this donation to AIPAC on your behalf.
Please do.
I don't know if they think that that's but that's,
you know what it is? It's petty and small and so tribal and so an example as to why people, it reaffirms the stereotype of Jews. And that is one of the reasons that we are seeing an increase in anti-Semitism right now, is because of people like that.
And that's also how they're able to get away with this. That's also the problem that we are facing right now, is they're able to get away with this in terms of the anti-Semitic rhetoric by basically calling them Jews instead of Israelis. Like they don't want to distinguish between Zionism and Judaism. They want them to be the same.
Yes.
And that is what the Zionists want. It's not just what the anti-Semites want, it's what the Zionists want.
Yeah, no, and this is why, and I also think we need to, and then bringing it all back around is, please remember there are more Christian Zionists in this country than there are Jews in the world. And the Christian Zionists, a lot of them are anti-Semites. I got to tell you, the only reason I'm not saying all of them is obviously I haven't met all of them, but their reason for Zionism is so that all the Jews can burn in hell together, essentially, and they can ascend, whatever their story is.
That sounds terrible.
But the point is that they're not with the Jews. Mm. They're not with the Jews, and Zionism was never for the Jews. They used the Jews. That's the difference. And then there's Jews that are still playing into that.
Ironically, this is supposed to be about peace and love and understanding, the things that we really can appreciate.
I would love to be about those things as soon as they get their boot off of the Palestinians' necks.
Wouldn't it help if we also had a way of promoting Earth Day with cannabis?
Oh, of course. Well, cannabis to me is up there with like puppies, as it makes everything better. I can't think, with the exception of Pilates, there is not a circumstance where cannabis does not make it better for me. Pilates, it's not pretty.
Well, interestingly enough, The gentleman that we are bringing on is actually a friend of the show. As amazing as it is for us to say that, this is his third time. He is gracing us with his presence. He is somebody who is somewhat of a hero to both of us, not just because of his career in wrestling as well as movies, but more so because he was a tremendous public servant and an even bigger and greater activist who has been working on behalf of the least of these for many, many years. And certainly...
And a staunch advocate for civil liberties.
Well, and one of those civil liberties is our ability to do as we see fit to our person without harming anybody else. And of course, the most obvious example of that, which doesn't actually harm you, is cannabis. So that's a big issue here. And that is something that should be legal across the board, and you should be able to grow it in your own backyard if you see fit.
I'm not capable. I've tried.
Well, and maybe not for you.
No,
but, you know.
I've killed cactus, please. And people don't realize that it's not easy to grow cannabis. Like sometimes in certain places you might get lucky if you throw in some seeds, but that's generally not how it works. It's a whole thing. We're going to learn about it, but I know it's a whole thing and I am not capable. Plus they have to be females. I ended up with a male. It was just, the whole thing was wrong.
He is the former governor of Minnesota.
Yes.
He is also somebody you have known in many great action flicks with Arnold over the years.
Please don't.
And he also is somebody that you know as one of the more recognizable wrestlers and commentators from the WWE, so we have to say it right. But he is also somebody who is here today because this has been, I have no doubt, been a passion project for him and his family for quite some time. And he is going to tell us all about what it's like to be a cannabis farmer.
I'm excited about this. I've seen it, but I want to know more about the cannabis farm.
Jesse Ventura, welcome back to Generation.
Thank you. It's great to be here, but I gotta give you the bad news right out of the get-go.
Bad news.
What happened?
You're looking for me to tell you how to grow cannabis? I don't know how.
Well, wait, okay, but
I got brilliant people who are working for me. That's their expertise. I'm as lost as you are, you know, between the male plant, the female plant, cross them, this, that, and whatever. No. I leave it to the experts, you know, the biologists and all of that stuff, the chemists, all the people that study it. They have degrees and they know what the heck they're doing. So if you're going to sit and think you're going to get out of me how to grow cannabis easy, it ain't happening today, guys.
No, we'll talk about the civil liberties and the policy aspects of this. I wasn't really thinking about the farming.
Well, maybe.
Well, I mean, it's complex. All right,
the farming comes in because the law makes you use that for a name.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
We where there's one, there's always the other. You know him from watching the Hawks. You know him as another great advocate for our civil liberties, especially in regards to legalizing cannabis.
Definitely.
And he is somebody who also has a show that we cannot neglect. Host of Die First, Then Quit, that Substack, which cannot get any better. Tyrel Ventura, welcome back to Generational Change.
Hey, thank you for having me. Always a pleasure being on with you guys, and thank you for having me and my dad on. This is a fun day as always.
No, it's always good. Take down our thing.
Yes, I will remove.
Okay, because when we have a 3 square, I just got to take down the logo. Okay, so we're not going to talk about farming, but talk a little bit. And I know, Jesse, you have talked about this before, like the history, what brought you to recognize that how good cannabis can be, and how ignorant we are about how we treat that. But where this particular business venture started, what was the impetus for this?
The impetus of it was this. For me, especially. Now, I've admitted now I've been a cannabis user. I graduated from high school in 1969. Well, that's the end of the 60s. I tried my first cannabis in 1969. Right. So, I've been familiar with it since then. But let's go to modern day. We'll leave Jimi Hendrix and we'll leave all that behind. Let's go to modern day. What got me focused and so passionate about ensuring cannabis becomes legal and everyone has access to it is because my wife, the First Lady of Minnesota, she about a decade or so ago started suffering late in life epileptic seizure disorder. In other words, my wife was seizing 2 to 3 times a week. And these were the kind of seizures where she's down on the floor, I'm holding her head, you're stopping her from swallowing her tongue, making sure she's still breathing. my life and her life was over as we knew it. This was going to be an everyday, weekly occurrence now, apparently. We went to the doctors. The medical doctors put her on 4 different pharmaceutical medications, supposedly to stop seizures. She tried the first one, did not work. Second one did not work. Third one did not work. Fourth one did not work. Some of them had horrible side effects, like her hair started falling out. Finally, in desperation, we had friends in Colorado, and Colorado was God bless Colorado for being the first state to decriminalize the prohibition of cannabis. We had friends out there. We went out there. She had a seizure the night before we got out there in the motel. We arrived. Our friends had to go in and illegally buy it for us because we were not Colorado residents. They had all these stipulations. They bought the drops under the tongue. My wife started that day 3 drops under the tongue. And to make the long story short, she has not had a seizure since. Not any seizure since. And so we were then our friends would send it to us illegally in Minnesota. And when I testified to this in front of the Congress of Minnesota, the legislature, I told them point blank, I was left with the decision, break the law or save my wife. I said, I chose saving my wife. Yes, I broke the law. But I said, these are bad laws. These are laws that need to disappear because I don't want any other family to have to go through what my wife and I went through, to where it was inaccessible for us to get cannabis, which would stop these seizures, which is the most important thing. You got to stop them first before you can deal with them. And cannabis was the only thing that did it. And the ironic thing about that is, my health insurance would gladly pay for the pharma crap that didn't work. Oh, they paid for that, no problem. They wouldn't pay a thing for the cannabis. And at first, it was costing me $600 a month to keep my wife seizure-free. Now it's much lower because Minnesota's expanded. Full legalization starts next year, with, quote, recreational, the whole gambit, thanks to Governor Walz. And by the way, he invited me when he signed it into law. He handed me the pen because he said, this was your baby and you're still alive. You need to be here to see it. And I was proud to be there. And I was very pleased the governor allowed me to do that in Minnesota. But that, in essence, is my story of why I am now passionately into the cannabis industry, because I don't want any Minnesota family or families across any family to have to go through what my wife and I went through simply because you have a product, and if you're religious, from a plant made by God. Because if you believe in God, you believe God made everything. Well, that means God made marijuana. And I don't think he made it to eradicate it. I think he made it to use it. As my friend Tommy Chong said, they're making a mistake when they divide marijuana into recreational and medical.
Yes.
Tommy says the entire plant is medical. He said those that smoke it for the euphoric feeling are doing it for mental health, like post-traumatic stress and things of that nature. I would rather have guys using marijuana than opiates for post-traumatic stress. Here you've got this plant out there that will grow, and it has so many uses. The guy who belongs in jail is William Randolph Hearst.
Oh, yeah.
He's the guy who led the fight and brainwashed America into believing that cannabis marijuana was some evil plant created by the devil.
Can we just go with the Sackler family? Let's just go with the Sackler family. They're still alive. They should all be in prison.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, now the genie's out of the bottle now, and that's the great thing. And I don't think they'll ever be able to put it back into the bottle.
No.
You got a whole generation of young people out there that I found out are not drinking beer. And I'm a former Miller Lite All-Star. Tastes great, less filling, and the whole thing. I did the whole thing. They did Lightomania, a whole ad thing. So the only difference is I'm switching over rather than advertising light beer from Miller. I'm going to advertise cannabis from Jesse Ventura now because the great thing I've learned, and the young people are learning this with cannabis, number one, you can use as much as you want and you don't get sick. You're not going to end up out in the alley throwing up like you do with beer and alcohol. We've all done that, haven't we? Ended up in the alley in the evening.
It's not pretty.
Throwing up.
It's not pretty.
And the best thing about cannabis, there's no hangover.
I know.
Geez, the next day with alcohol, your head's pounding, you're dehydrated, you feel horrible. Well, with cannabis, you don't. And the young people are learning this, the people that are drinking it in the the carbonated drinks and all that. They're fine. And I guess the beer industry's in a panic.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because they got an entire generation out there that's not sucking down Bud Light and Miller.
Tyrel, what has been sort of the odyssey of getting to this point? Because this is a huge deal for you guys. We are huge advocates for civil liberties, but cannabis has always been a huge problem when it comes to the legalization factor, because very few people, I think, truly, even when you're really in the political arena, most people are not fully aware just how powerful big alcohol and big pharma really are, and the amount of money that they spend to lobby against any type of cannabis legalization, because they know that if people are smoking weed, they're less likely to be popping pills or drinking alcohol.
Well, exactly. And also I think the biggest thing that scares, let's say, the alcohol industry or the pharmaceutical industry is that the thing with cannabis is that anyone can grow it. It's a weed. You can grow it and make it yourself if you want to. So that's always been the big fear, is that it's easily accessible. Now, when you want to get into the more exotic stuff like we do with various edibles and flavors and hybrids and all of that, that's where you can start going to the stores and going to the recreational outlets or ordering it online like we have. But it's been a journey. We, myself, along with the three of my partners at Jesse Ventura Farms, we started this project 3 years ago. And kind of all came together, and all of the three people that I work with, Tabitha Wallace, Robert Watson, and L. Jeffrey Moore, we all have various backgrounds in both entertainment and business. And we came together and said, the two, at the time, this is about 2020, right during the pandemic, we were kind of looking at the state of the country and going like, okay, well, what are the two biggest industries you can kind of get into still? And be entrepreneurs in. And at the time, it was the cannabis industry and cryptocurrency. And I'm sorry, I don't know nothing about cryptocurrency. To me, it seems like kind of a tech bro fad thing. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't, there's probably good people out there, but it seems a little bit like a scheme in the long run of things, like most currency is. But as we wanted to get into the cannabis industry, and that is when we said, let's approach my father, because he's been an advocate his entire life. And as he told the story, it's meant so much to our family and the impact it's had on our family in saving my mother's life, that it was kind of a natural idea to go to him. And so that kind of, we went to him with our concepts and our ideas. And thankfully, my dad said, yes, run with it. I'd love to be a part of this. And so then we, at the time, Minnesota was, I think it was just medical, but they were still wildly restrictive, and they weren't going to do recreational cannabis. And so we were looking at the states that you could, whether Colorado, California. I think back in 2020, it was still pretty, it was maybe 15 states or so, if that. And so we were looking at California, and then that's when the governor got the call from Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, and said they were going to push hard to make cannabis recreational and bring it above board in the state of Minnesota. And that's when we decided, let's switch and obviously go to the home state, go to the state where Jesse, where he was governor and where I'm from and where our heart lies. It's our families here. We're born and bred Minnesotans, and we love Minnesota. And so that's when we changed operations and moved here. And, after it was passed, We interviewed and auditioned a lot of like local Minnesota homegrown companies because we wanted to use Jesse's brand and the strength of his voice and the strength of everything he spent a lifetime building to really get behind a local business here and really kind of prop up those businesses, because the fight in the marijuana industry is kind of the fight in a lot of industries, is that you don't want the big conglomerates coming in and then driving out the small middle and middle-sized or small business owners. That same fight is going on in the cannabis industry. And so that's why after auditioning and meeting with a lot of different companies, we went with Retro Bakery, which is a local company out of Brooklyn Center, which is the city right next to where Jesse was mayor of Brooklyn Park. It's a beautiful, diverse working group there. One of the co-owners is a black female. It was one of those companies. They have a daycare. It's like one of the best progressive kind of run companies you could find, with a lot of hardworking blue collar people involved in it. And it just fit who we were, and they were excited. We were excited. And the best part about it is they make some really incredible products. I mean, the taste alone.
That is a very good transition, because we're going to pull it up now.
Yeah.
Because for everybody who's watching, the website is retrobakery.net. Please tell us about some of these wonderful products.
But see, now a lot of this stuff can't be sent to us here in Florida, right? Like there's certain rules about it.
Actually, yes, it can, because this is part of the these products are all made from the hemp end, so it falls under the like Delta 9 and Delta 8 and things like that. So now next year we're going to grow up to, because Minnesota will officially be able to sell it and distribute it. Next year we'll go up to the official cannabis end. But essentially, as we all know, it's kind of the same thing. Really, it's just molecular, a little different. I'm not the PhD to explain that, but the results that you want are all the same. So you can actually order these around the country and things like that, and you're safe to order them and things like that. But we sat down with Retro Bakery and with Jesse and came up with some really fun products that really spoke to who Jesse is, and also spoke to like what Retro Bakery is capable of. They're some of the best chocolate makers in your life. Like I want some of their candy bars just simply because they taste great. Not even just that they'll also give you the great high. But we developed the Lake Street collection and the 38th Governor's Selects collection, which are all curated by us and Jesse. Lake Street we picked because it's one of the most famous streets in Minneapolis that Jesse grew up next to, and is kind of your everyday beautiful products there. And then also the Governor's Select is kind of the really special, neat products that taste the best, and they're gummies and chocolate bars. They're really great stuff. And I don't want to sound like I'm just hawking products on your channel here right now, but it's really close to our hearts and close to Jesse's hearts what we've been able to accomplish with all this.
Well, we're definitely going to make an order.
You had me at chocolate, but that's the thing. You had me at chocolate. I'm not so into the gummies, but now I see there's a chocolate situation.
All right. So
the other nice thing too with the gummies is they make them, I believe, from Picton, as opposed to just pure fake sugar. So everything in it is vegan and natural too. I'll tell you this, Jen, if you like the chocolate, you're going to love, there's a white, there's a white chocolate, a lemon bar flavor that's absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I would eat it whether it got me high or not. It's just,
I'm going to have to put in an order for this. I'm going to have to put in an order for this later. But yeah, we see the same stuff here when we were having, we do have recreational on the ballot for November, which is great. They've tried in the past, the one initiative they tried to get through in the past, but didn't allow for home grow. Now this one does. And the problem is, and I've been saying this for a long time, the last thing we need is a big pharma of weed. That's the last thing that I want to happen. So that doesn't help us in any way. We're people like us are better off with it, not even big. Please.
I think you're going to see an attempt at that, of course. You're going to see an attempt for, if I can switch it over to alcohol, you're going to see Miller Beer. You're going to see Budweiser. You're going to see them try to get the entire industry across the country. But also remember this, even in the alcohol industry, you got all those micro brews surviving out there. You got all the local, and that's what we're pushing. And on everything we sell, there'll be a state of Minnesota stamp on it. And we're putting that on there to Minnesotans, basically saying, hey, we can produce cannabis in Minnesota. We can cultivate it in Minnesota by Minnesotan. Keep the money in Minnesota. where it belongs because it's a Minnesota product. And now we're going everywhere with it. And certainly other states have the ability to say the same thing. But I think in the cannabis industry, there's room for survival because there's always been an underlying loyalty to cannabis smokers when it was always illegal. You could go anywhere in the country pretty well and always get it.
Yeah.
And you got it just because there's a sense between cannabis smokers.
Yes.
They feel each other, for a lack of better term. And they're very loyal.
We smell each other too.
Maybe that's it.
I got to tell you, I am often out and I can smell my people. And I'll say to him, like, I smell my people somewhere.
Well, you know, and one of the things that we're also doing with this is I want to also stress too that for Jesse and all of us here at Jesse Ventura Farms, you know, this isn't a quick cash grab for us. Like one of the things that we're looking to do with these products and as we introduce more different variables and things like that and different modalities down the line is we're also going to use proceeds from what we do to help groups that need money and need help and things of that nature. So, you know, we'll put out specialized products that then, you know, such and such percentage of the sales go back to charity, you know, go back to this charity or go back to this activist group or things of that nature. Because look, as we all know here in the United States of America, as tragically as this is, money makes a difference. We see it every day on Capitol Hill. How many lobbyist groups spend money to influence our politicians to vote against our best wishes? Well, the only way that you can combat that is by funneling money against that. As I like to think of it, it's like the good Illuminati. You know, if you can start sending your money to the right causes and really helping those that really need it to push back against some of the dastardly things we see coming out of Washington or coming out of these big corporations, this is one of the ways we do it. And at Jesse Ventura Farms, we're definitely looking in. That's going to be part of who we are. Ben and Jerry is a good example of like they're always out at all the big protests and things like that, handing out ice cream and putting their money where their values are.
Oh, please come hand out weed at all the rallies in the market. Please come do that. Nobody ever is doing that.
Here's another thing I want for my ego. Now, I've had multiple careers, you know, throughout from wrestler to, you know, getting elected governor to movies with Arnold, you name it, and all that. But here's what I want out of cannabis. Paul Newman is known, wait a minute, he's known today by an entire generation of young people only for his spaghetti sauce. Most of them don't even know he was a race car driver and a tremendous actor. Well, cannabis gives me the opportunity where I can become my own Paul Newman. Where I want to be recognized with cannabis, Jesse Ventura, to where maybe the cannabis will overwhelm the wrestling and all the stuff that preceded it. And that's my motivation today. I want to become with the new generation, the next Paul Newman, who they recognize for something other than what he was actually famous for.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because when you were talking about giving it back, the first thing that came into my mind, it's like Newman's Own.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's one of the reasons that came through my mind. And one of the reasons I've always loved that is because 100% of their profits have always gone to charity. And and plus, I mean, come on, it was Paul Newman. Now, and I am old enough to know what that is. Like, I get that. So yeah, but I think that's a huge thing.
I mean, who can't love Reggie Dunlop?
Player coach Reggie Dunlop. Yeah.
Player coach Reggie Dunlop from Slapshot.
See, you've been a huge advocate for this, and one of the things a lot of people know you for was your attempt to unionize the fellow wrestlers back in the 80s, and obviously what happened as a result of that. But what was the reaction when it came to promoting the use of cannabis? One of the biggest problems, particularly in sports entertainment, is the use of opioids. People have these chronic problems that they have to deal with on a regular basis. But going back to the 80s and knowing all the problems that a lot of these guys, many of your fellow wrestlers that you've worked with over the years have since passed on, what was the initial reaction from Mr. McMahon at the time? And what has been the overall reaction from fellow wrestlers over the years? Do they see that it is necessary to transition to something like this versus the opioids that was so prevalent and probably still is to a degree?
Well, I can't answer the question of the opioids being that prevalent. I assume they were if people say they were. I was using cannabis back then. I mean, for the pain and to get to sleep at night and everything that went with being part of that wrestling business. And the dangerous thing about it was trying to get it or travel with it without being busted, you know? And, but I can't answer to the opiates, what you talk about, because I very much kept to myself and I didn't take them and I wanted no knowledge of them or anything about them. If they were prevalent, I didn't know it. Believe it or not, I didn't know it. But I did use cannabis, I'll admit to that, on a very regular basis. I'd come back to my room at night after wrestling. You're tired, you're hurting. I'd order room service. I'd smoke a joint, I'd eat, and I'd fall asleep and go to the airport and on to the next town the next day and repeat the same thing over again. Yeah. And just to tell people, you know, a lot of people wrestling, oh yeah, I like to refer to it as ballet with violence because it's choreographed, but you're a great athlete. Nobody's going to say Nureyev isn't a great athlete and everything he does is choreographed. But what I say is the life itself. And there's guys that worked way more than me. My record, I wrestled one time 63 consecutive nights in a row.
Wow.
Without a day off. 63 nights in a row.
And that's driving from town to town in between those nights.
Well, and coming home and all that. But imagine the pain in your body. Imagine every night. The thing you're lucky for is you're 26. Your bodies can go through a tremendous amount of abuse.
Yeah.
But I was doing cannabis back then, and a lot of wrestlers were. Doing it for both the pain as well as sleeping at night and everything that cannabis can bring to the table. But were there opiates? I guess, you would know as much as I know on that. I don't know if there was or not. I can only assume there were because of all the deaths.
Yeah.
That took place.
I would imagine.
Was that opiates or steroids?
Well, I think it's definitely a combination of things. I look back to just a number of guys, and you look at who I always felt was the best wrestler, particularly during that era, Bret Hart, and all of the family members that he has lost and friends that he has lost over the years, and about the guys that were obviously abusing, PEDs and all of those things. But I would be curious to how many, like yourself, were using cannabis as a means to deal with the wear and tear that comes with being on the road 300 some odd days a year.
A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all I'll say. I won't say any names. I'll just say a lot.
And now we're in a position because of the significance of what this represents. The fact that state by state, we have two major ballot initiatives that are going on in this state in November. One is reproductive freedom.
I might get my reproductive autonomy back. Isn't that exciting?
Yeah. And then, of course,
thank goodness.
Yes. Yeah. And then cannabis is obviously a big one. Mm-hmm. And I think that, state to state, that is ultimately how it's going to happen because, DC can't do anything or they don't care to do anything.
No.
But if we do take our states' rights, we can get where we need to be because cannabis should be legal.
Most people support. We need to get 60% here because I live in the state where people were stupid enough to vote away their rights 10 years ago or so. And they actually said yes to an amendment to decrease our power. So now we need 60%. Yes, that passed. Yes, it did. And most people just go, oh, yes, and they write it confusing and all that. So now we need 60%. But
and they also write it that it's for your best good and safety.
It's a lot of double negatives.
People hear that thing about, if it's for my safety, then, I'll support this.
It's not good.
Well, you've always said there's like a psychological component to it.
Most people vote yes on amendments.
And they always vote for the first name.
They vote for the first name. Yeah, it's true. Most people vote yes on amendments anyway, and people know that. But because we need 60%, I'm confident about it for my lady freedoms. I'm not necessarily as confident about it for the recreational cannabis. I'd like that, but I don't. We'll see.
Yeah, I really hope Florida, for all you people out there listening to them in Florida, it's so important because the amount of job creation and money and growth that it brings into the state. I mean, Florida's a huge tourist state. And if you can bring in more tourists because they can go there and legally and safely smoke up while they go to Disney World, awesome.
Is the problem in Florida that they place cannabis with books?
Well, that could be.
Is that the problem down there? Is that cannabis is getting lumped in with books?
Well, one of our counties actually banned a dictionary. They banned the Merriam-Webster dictionary in one of the Panhandle counties.
This is also one of the big contrasting differences between a state like Minnesota. I've always said, if you really want to know just how much of an independent streak a state like Minnesota really has, you're the one state that did not vote for Reagan in '84 when you're talking about the most popular reelected president in the modern era, and yet Minnesota said we're not doing it, and they elected you as governor as an independent. Again, something that isn't common. So what is it about Minnesota that makes you guys such a unique state in the union?
By the way, it's the first place I'm going.
Part of it's this, I think. Part of it's this. You know how in America, if you say the word socialism, there's a panic?
Right.
Right? If you even mention the word socialism, oh my God, not socialism. We'll do anything. No socialism. Well, Minnesota's a little bit different on that in the fact of where Minnesotans come from.
I was going to say,
you have to look at the Minnesota, who migrated to Minnesota, Swedes and Norwegians, and those from the upper part of Europe over there, the northern circle, the Arctic Circle of Europe. Those are most of your immigrants, as well as, Germans. I happen to be German Slovak, but we have a great deal of Norwegians, a great deal of Swedes. And if you look at both of those countries, they're both very socialistic countries where they provide education for the masses. They provide universal health care for everybody. They do things on a socialist level, and they don't have this built-in fear of socialism like we here in the U.S. do. And I'll finish with this. How come we're so afraid of anything socialistic when it's socialism that protects our very capitalism?
Right.
And what I mean by that is the U.S. military. That is complete, unadulterated socialism. And yet everybody thanks you for your socialistic service, right? Thank you for your socialistic service. They don't add that socialist in there, but they say thank you for your service. And they don't realize the military is complete socialism, top to bottom.
Yeah.
But there's your answer, I think, on Minnesota. We have such deep roots to Norway and Sweden and the part of Europe where socialism is not looked at as negatively as it is in other parts of the country.
Well, also, too, I'll add on to that, too, is I think that the fun thing about Minnesota is that we, as a whole, and now we have an amazing Somali population that's immigrated here as well, and they are incredible. I mean, that's one of the beautiful things about Minnesota is it kind of gets a bad rap of thinking everyone thinks, oh, it's just frozen tundra Vikings up here, but actually it's a really amazing, like since moving back 2 years ago, it's a really amazing state. And I think that one of the things, we're very independent minded. I think we're even when you look at the artists that come out of Minnesota, from Prince to Bob Dylan to the Coen brothers to Terry Gilliam, you have a really interesting dynamic group of individuals that kind of come out of Minnesota, because I think that there's a strong independent streak here. And with that independent streak, there's also a strong sense of community and wanting to take care of your brothers and sisters. That doesn't mean we don't have our problems. It doesn't mean that we don't have our issues here with racism and things of that nature. But I think at the very core of Minnesota is a very, very strong, both independent streak meshed with a beautiful love of community. And you probably get that when you got to spend 6 months out of the year freezing your ass off, and you're trapped indoors and you got to rely on your neighbor for wood and shelter. It creates that element. But no, and I think that's where that comes from. But I got to say again to the citizens of Florida, take your freedom in your own hand. I mean, voting for cannabis, voting for, you know, reproductive rights, that's your freedoms that you're voting on. Like, don't give those up. Don't allow, you know, politicians to decide what is freedom.
Freedoms are very difficult to get back once you've surrendered them. And that's the bottom line. Even if people don't necessarily, they could be totally against the use of marijuana and cannabis, but don't vote against freedom. Let people make choices. Don't have the government telling you what you can or can't do if you're not harming anyone else. That's the big thing. Freedom is about you as an individual having the freedom to make your own choices in life, and as long as you don't harm your fellow man, and don't infringe upon your fellow man's rights. In other words, go outside and smoke a joint if somebody's offended. You know,
we have a real big problem right now, I think, and this is both parties are guilty of this, but we have a big problem in our government, in a lot of in many aspects of our government today, because you really get a sense in the way they talk about the voting public is they talk down to us as if we're infants, or that we're sometimes we're not smart enough. We're just not, we can't make those decisions. So allow us to make those decisions for you because you're just too stupid and you're the rabble, and that's the problem. And both parties are guilty of this because you hear that language, coming out of everyone from Ron DeSantis to Hillary Clinton.
I'll tell you this.
They both use this same kind of like infantilizing language when they talk about the citizens of the United States.
I'll tell you this. I'm considered a straight talker. And I truly believe if I don't have a political machinery. I never have. I had only one paid person when I ran for governor, and that was my campaign manager. It's the only person that got paid. Everybody was a volunteer. But I could tell you this, unequivocally, if I had ballot access in all 50 states this year, and if they do have debates, and I heard they're not even going to have any now, there's the threat there won't be any debates.
No, I doubt it. I don't think there will be.
They can't have a debate.
Well, if they had debates, and if I had a ballot access in all 50 states, I truly believe I could win. Because the two candidates I faced 20 years ago were not disliked. Mayor Norm Coleman and Attorney General Skip Humphrey were not disliked. In fact, Mayor Coleman went on to become a senator later. And Skip, heck, him and his family names on half the buildings in Minnesota, and so they were not disliked. These two that are running now would be easier to beat than the two I faced 20 years ago. And I firmly believe that because for some reason, for whatever reasons, their negatives are so high. Nobody wants to see this election.
Well, I could give you the reasons. We know some of the reasons. I mean, genocide is at the top of the list for some people, but these are two of the most unpopular people I've ever seen. Like, this is ridiculous. And honestly, I don't want them to debate. I don't want to listen to either of them. So I don't want to see that.
I do. Here, maybe you guys could help me with this, because I'm always looking to make some money. How about this? How about we start a demand for we'll call it a fun debate, pay-per-view, Jesse Ventura against Joe Biden and Donald Trump.
They'll never do it, though.
He'll be the only
but
one
they
debating.
Could have the money for their campaigns then, we'll do it pay-per-view. And we'll see how many people would be willing. I'm telling you, I'd do it because I'd become a multimillionaire. I think you'd have more people to see Jesse Ventura debate Donald Trump.
It'd be hilarious. I think it'd be great, but that's why they won't. They're not going to do that. They know that.
We do.
Yeah, but wait a minute. Money talks. You forget you're dangling money in front of them. You got to dangle the dough out there, man.
They do dance for money.
They're prostitutes. They'll do anything for money.
I do remember back in 2016 when the race was pretty close and it was just Trump had gotten the nomination and Bernie and Hillary was still going. And Bernie was like, hey, Trump, let's do a debate. He's like, yeah, let's do a debate. It'd be a great idea. And then, of course, everybody freaked out like, no, that's not how this works. You're not allowed to do that. And I'm thinking, no, he even suggested, hey, how about we raise, $5-10 million for charity or something like that. I'm like, it's a great idea. That's what you should do. And of course, things that would benefit the people are not the things that are happening
What
right
would benefit
now.
the people would be a legitimate debate hosted by the League of Women Voters. That's what would benefit the people. But we threw that out a long time ago. Now it's just a political theater exercise.
All right, so we do have to talk about this because obviously this is something we talked about the last time you were on here. And of course, the news picked up that you were at the top of the running to be RFK's VP. Obviously, that is not what ended up happening. He ended up picking up somebody who is, let's be honest, a major financial contributor, which just completely plays into this whole notion of it's going to take some type of an R word. Again, we can't really say the word, but you know what I'm talking about, in order to completely fix this system that is perpetually broken at this point.
Or flip it upside down.
Absolutely. And I think if he had picked you, or at least, again, there's probably some things that needed to be negotiated that maybe you weren't willing to move on that he wouldn't like. I mean, let's be honest, he should have you instead of Rabbi Shmuley in his ear 24/7.
Shmuley.
But the fact that
so
you
gross.
were not, but the fact that he did not extend the olive branch the way that I think he should have. First of all, I think he shot himself in the foot because I do think there is a golden opportunity right now because the two main major party candidates are so unpopular in this moment that there could be an opportunity to have an even bigger Ross Perot-like situation.
So why didn't that happen?
So why didn't that happen?
I don't know. I will tell you, Bobby, I was a finalist. Bobby came out to Tucson where I was living at the time. And in fact, I introduced him that night. He had a fundraiser at, I forget the name of the theater in Tucson, sold out. In fact, he raised more money that night, I found out, than what I spent to become governor.
Wow.
Wow.
He raised more money at the theater that night than what I spent to win governor. Anyway, that aside, because see, I don't need money to win. I told Bobby that. I said, if I'm your choice, you don't need money. I said, I'll win it with no money. I won Minnesota without money. And I then met with Bobby for 2 hours. And I was very honored that he was considering me. I still feel very strongly that we need to break the two-party dictatorship that we have in our country, no matter what. And so when you say to me, did I have differences with Bobby? Certainly. But the overriding thing with Bobby is, for me, is the fact we deserve more than two choices, handpicked by these two elite parties. And so any differences I would have had with Bobby were secondary in comparison to being able to go out there and attempt to destroy, as my friend Ralph Nader calls it, the two-party dictatorship that we fall under today. So was I disappointed Bobby didn't pick me? A little bit. But then I also feel that Bobby may have saved my life because I'm not who I used to be. I'm 70. I'll be 73 years old this summer. I'm a strong advocate for younger leadership in the country. And Bobby and I would have been the spring chickens at age 70 and 73.
Right.
And I kind of had to laugh over that one. You know, we'd be the youngsters. Yeah. But anyway, I'll just say this. I couldn't bring Bobby any money. That I can't do. But what I think I could have done for Bobby, and I know I could have done, I would have brought extreme credibility to his candidacy, being able to show people someone who did it, someone who defeated the Democrats and Republicans, to show the public it can be done, and to show the public they still have the power to make it happen, that it's in your hands. You can do it. That would have been what I would have brought to the table. That and the fact that I still remember back in, was it 2024? They ran a poll, Fox News, I'll never forget, Fox News, of all people, ran a poll in 2024.
Or 2020.
2020.
Or 2020, I'm sorry, misspoke. Back in 2020, Fox ran a poll, Biden, Trump, Ventura. I wasn't even a candidate and got 26%.
I think I remember that, actually.
Yeah, so the difference in what Bobby did, in my opinion, Bobby was left with the choice of finance yourself and get ballot access and choose her, or choose someone like Jesse Ventura and get votes. I disagree. I think in a third-party candidacy, you don't worry about money. You go after votes.
There's already enough grassroots energy that wants out from under this two-party stranglehold. So the decision, and again, I think that also comes from his level of privilege and the people that he associates with on a regular basis, being a Kennedy, being somebody who's based in LA. I think that that is a factor without question in terms of, making those decisions.
You're right. And he also fell under what I called Hillary Clinton syndrome.
And what's that?
Well, when Hillary went against Trump way back when, she went and did fundraisers. Trump went and did what I did, rallies.
Oh, yeah.
And that's your philosophical difference here.
Yep.
They think you got to go fundraise and make that. I call it the Hillary Clinton syndrome. You got to go get money to get votes. And what I'm saying is, as a third party candidate, you don't need money. You need the votes.
Yeah.
And also, to be clear too, Bobby never actually officially asked Jesse.
No,
to
he
be
never.
VP.
He never officially asked.
There was never actually a conversation that said, would you be? That never came about. Just so people are clear.
Right.
I will just say that I was a finalist. And how many finalists Bobby had, I don't know. I don't know if the Aaron Rodgers was legitimately a finalist. Bobby and I didn't.
That's just so silly to me.
We didn't discuss that. No, we didn't. That didn't come up. And
what I will say, and I think that this is very important, and I was at Bobby's launch in Philadelphia, and I got to meet a number of his, let's just say, because I was there as part of press, believe it or not, for Generational Change, which was interesting.
He got a press pass.
So I was able to kind of rub elbows with a number of the heavy hitters that were there. And needless to say, I think that whatever decision he did make regarding Shanahan or any of the decisions he's made regarding his affiliation with Rabbi Shmuley, I think that that's being made by people that more or less are funding his campaign, because he does have a lot of money and he is going to have ballot access. I do think he's a threat. I don't think he's going to win, but I do think that he can cause a ruckus, if you will.
Good.
And I think that that is what's necessary. But I want to leave you with this thought, because one thing that we have seen, we have a strong affinity for Dr. Cornel West. We also see that there's a number of other people on the left. Obviously, Jill Stein is running on the Green Party ticket again. Claudia Dela Cruz is running on the Socialist ticket. And I do like this gentleman, Chase Oliver, who may very well be the nominee on the Libertarian ticket. My question to you is, why is there such a lack of cohesion with these outside forces to recognize that your strength is greater when you coalesce than if you split apart? Because there's so many chefs in the kitchen.
Yeah.
That's a great question, because I got the answer. When I won governor in Minnesota, I brought all the third parties together to the governor's residence. We sat down and I tried to tell them, look, if we all work together, we can defeat the Democrats and Republicans. Do you know what it is, though? I'll tell you exactly. Have you ever herded cats?
Yeah.
What you got is a room full of 8 to 10 cats.
Yeah.
And they're all running in different directions, and they all have their favorite issue that they won't bend on. They won't compromise on this issue. I won't compromise on this issue. I tried to tell them, can't we move forward? And I found what we all had in common. You know what it was? None of us took dirty money.
Yeah.
None of us took special. I said, can't we build upon that? Can't
Yes.
we come together that all of us agree we don't want the dirty money? And why can't we get behind one candidate? All the parties, and legitimately create a third entity. They all got their, it's ego. They all got their prime issue and they won't move on it. And in the end, they don't want to win. It's that simple, because they won't do the things required to win.
Just be selfless.
They don't want to win. All they want to do is make statements. All they want to do is bring to the attention whatever their pet thing is. They don't truly want to win, and they don't truly. I mean, I remember I was speaking once, and the libertarians were there. And I started talking about transportation issues, and the libertarians started to boo me.
Right.
So I stopped the speech and I said, "You don't think government should be involved in transportation?" They went, "No." I said, "How'd you get here today?" I said, "What are you going to do? Have private roads with a toll every 50 feet?"
Yes.
I said, in a civilized society, government is required to a certain extent. You can't live in a civilized society and not have government. There are certain things that are required for the public domain. And transportation being one of them. Otherwise, you'd have a toll every 50 feet. Who could go anywhere? Everybody that owned land would charge, "Oh, you're going to cross my land? Give me $1." So I learned the libertarians, they don't believe there should be government at all.
Right.
Well,
they're really more anarchist. I've noticed it's huge.
Yeah, but in a civilized society, you have to have some form of government.
Yeah. I've noticed that in the past few years of canvassing, and as people are pulling away from whatever party affiliation they may or may not have had, not only are there an inordinate amount of people that are no party, there's an inordinate amount of people that are no government. And they don't necessarily call themselves anarchists, but they kind of are. And so they're like, "No, I'm a libertarian," but I'm thinking, but you don't want there to be a government in charge of anything.
Yeah.
So how is that libertarian?
Well, that's fine if you want to live in a world of every man for themselves.
That's what these
and that's
people
fine,
want.
because there probably won't be a rule of law then either.
No, they
You'll
want
be able to
go
run
Lord
around and do it. It'll be survival of the fittest.
Which is why the distinction needs to be made that if you, again, the concept of libertarianism is limited government, not no government, which is unfortunately what has seeped into that movement. This whole, I'm going to live off the reservation. I've got my 2 or 3 acres of land, and this is my plot. And if you come on it, that's like that whole lifestyle that is just, that's not libertarianism.
And here's the thing I think that a lot of those folks forget is that, yes, that might work when you're living 100 miles to 150 miles away from major metropolitan areas. Yeah. And it's a community of like say 20 people, maybe even 100 people, even maybe that might work in a small community. But when you're talking about cities with 20 million people living in them, you can't have it be every person for themselves. There has to be some foundational level to which to build society. But everything we're talking about, to me, speaks to just how much the Democrat and Republican parties and the infrastructure of our government, the institutions of our government, have lost trust with the American people. So when people lose trust of their institutions, whether that be media, whether that be justice, whether that be the Supreme Court, whether that be Congress, the presidency, when people lose trust of that those people are not looking out for the benefit of the all, but only the benefit of the few, that's where you now see that ideology take place of, well, I don't want any government whatsoever. And I think while I disagree with that ideology, I can understand where it comes from, given what a piss poor job we've seen from a lot of our institutions. And I'm not just talking about the rank and file people working there. I'm talking about usually the political appointees that get in and push agenda rather than what's good for the whole of the people. I do have to say that we have to run soon. So
oh yes, thank you so much.
Everything, but
I want to make one last
election.
I want to make one last bold statement though on the Supreme Court. I'd like to know how it is that those 3 justices could lie like they did, because they were all asked unequivocally, will you overturn Roe v. Wade? And they all said, no, it's established law. And then the first thing they did when they got in there was overturn it. Now, in the private sector, if you filled out a job application and you lied on your application over something as important as that, and they found out you lied later, you would be brought in on the carpet and you would be dismissed. You would lose your job. Yeah. Why is it that these 3 justices could lie on their application and yet still be Supreme Court justices for life?
Yeah, good
3
question.
liars, 3 bold-faced liars who lied.
Yeah.
Is there any other way to put it? There's no way to soft soap it. They lied, and they did it on their job application.
And that puts a button on what we've been talking about all along, which is the trust or lack thereof in our current government as it stands today. It has reached a point of no return.
Yes.
And so the question's going to become, how is this going to unfold as we go forward?
No, it hasn't. I'm going to stop you and say I'm older than you, and I'm going to tell you, go back and listen to Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young, 4 dead in Ohio. We've been through it before. We'll get through it again.
That's what I think.
Let's vote out of office folks like Debbie Washington Schultz, who've been there way too long. And so I got to give you a shout out, Jen. Keep up the good work in your campaign, and I hope you can bring her down.
Thank you.
We will get it. You and I will talk about that and see if we can talk further about what we were briefly talking about in text and get that on another day.
Thank you, guys.
But guys, make sure you get over to retrobakery.net pages, Jesse-Ventura-Farms-Buy.
Just go to Retro Bakery.
Yes, but make sure you go and get some of those products.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jesse.
They won't disappoint you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Always a treat. Always a pleasure. And
guys,
I will definitely be on.
Well,
we are, but I will definitely be. I'll get some of them bad boys. You like chocolate?
I
like dark chocolate.
Yeah, I like chocolate.
Yes. Well, who doesn't?
Chocolate.
And the one thing that I wanted to mention before Jesse went, it wasn't that relevant, but I'll mention it now. And he's absolutely 1000% correct about this. The issue with like the herding cats, like, like you want to, figure out how you're going to bring all of these personalities together. And he is without question correct as it pertains. This thing is stuck. Now it's not. There we go. I think. There we go. See?
Okay.
Technology.
I can attest that the people, the organizers and stuff, it is so hard for people to coalesce because everybody does have their pet project and their ego and their opinion about stuff. And that is one of the biggest problems that I see on the left. And at the end of the day, and I've said this repeatedly, until all of the movements coalesce and show up for each other, we're gonna kind of just be like nickel and diming it.
And Jesse's absolutely right when he was discussing, and that is great self-care, Maven. We hope you'll all do that because we're going to do it. That's our paying it forward. And of course, you all know the things that, we're involved in. But with that being said, Jesse, I think probably at one time would have strongly considered a run on the Libertarian Party ticket if it was more of the Libertarian Party that is reflective in the way that it used to be. But again, as the government, as it's currently constructed, continues to move in the direction of, full-blown corporate capture, which is where it's at. It's understandable why the Libertarian Party has, in many ways, as you've suggested, turned into a full-blown anarchist party.
I mean, they're not. The truth is, and this is why I don't like labels, because people have different ideas of what different things mean to them. And so it's really hard. I meet people that are self-proclaimed conservatives, and we have a whole bunch of things in common that we agree with that I wouldn't necessarily have thought were conservative. So I don't love labels.
No, I definitely agree with that. And then the other problem that you also have to recognize is that something is simple, and Jesse has always gone to town on the Green Party. for their dysfunction and the things that they do wrong. And I'm only looking at somebody like Jill Stein, who was recently a guest on our show. Did you even attempt to extend an olive branch to somebody like Claudia Dela Cruz to make her your VP? Because again, the Socialist Party ticket's not going anywhere, but the Green Party ticket might actually be on almost every state. Why was an olive branch not extended to somebody like Claudia Dela Cruz, where you could potentially have, some type of a unification of sorts? Like, that is something that could happen. And that would generate a level of interest in the left of saying, wow, it's not just ego driven. It's actually like, we have an opportunity here to do something.
We're trying to do some things.
Well, no, it's not going to happen between Dr. West and Dr. Stein. But why couldn't it happen with somebody like Claudia Dela Cruz, who's a real socialist leftist?
But you know what? For every person that we like, there'll be someone who doesn't like said person and will be not wanting to work with them. Like, there's so many little
but the
things.
things that we're doing in the political arena are not ego driven.
Well, right. And there are people that share that mission, but there's a lot of people that are on their own mission.
Yeah.
All right. We gotta wrap.
We're going to wrap. Monday night, we'll be at a regular time, 9 p.m. We are going to be speaking with a candidate for Senate that Jen has wanted to speak to for a long time.
Yes. And I am on the advisory board for Catch Fire, which is an organization that supports grassroots candidates, provides all sorts of support services, educational things for candidates. And Zach Shrewsbury is the candidate, and he is running for U.S. Senate in West Virginia. He is running for Manchin's seat. And so, yes, and I do like him as a candidate. I was one of the people that said, yes, we should endorse him.
So that will be on Monday night, and we will obviously have more guests coming up, but obviously you guys know what our primary focus is these days. But if you are so inclined and you are especially outside the United States, wink, wink, some people who are here right now.
Yeah, no.
Make sure you get over to patreon.com/generational change. For as little as $5 a month, you can become a supporter of our small but mighty podcast. That's how we are able to get amazing guests like the body to come on here and have this conversation.
Yes.
And, it's funny. We've had conversations in the past that were even of greater length. In fact, I think the first time he was on, we talked for almost 2 hours. So yeah,
love Jesse.
He is one of our absolute favorites. One of my personal heroes. I think very, very highly of him. And if I may, but I'm telling you, when we were on the set of Predator and we were on the set of The Running Man, and Jesse was trying to flex his muscles and make it seem like they were as big as mine. And I told him, yeah, we'll do our flex and I'll see what you got. And then of course I get there and I show him everything I got. And he's like, Arnold, you did it to me again. I can't believe I actually believed I could beat you.
See, you don't have Jesse right.
I do have Jesse down just a little bit. I'll let the audience decide.
No, it's too mixed with your Reagan.
Well, that was well, I can never win the great state of Minnesota because that's what happened. But trust me, he's a really great guy.
It is ironic that we're talking about Minnesota when I know that's like the first place I'm going when I move my camper. I'm going to Minnesota. I'm going to Voyageurs National Park.
No, what you got to do when you go to Minnesota, you got to go to Lake Minnetonka. That is where Prince is from.
Oh, no, I want to go to Voyageurs. I've got something, but no, my trip is to go to, it's so funny. Like, I definitely want to go to Minnesota.
I didn't realize that.
Plus Paul Wellstone, Minnesota there's, I have a soft spot for Minnesota.
Ilhan Omar.
Well, I do love Ilhan Omar, but I mean, Wellstone Democrats are, that's how I'm a Wellstone Democrat.
But and Minnesota's also had like I said, if you look at there's a difference between the federally elected Democratic Party and the state Democratic parties. Each one is different. The Minnesota Democratic Party has their shit together, and their Governor Walz, he's pretty good. And the fact that he, as a Democrat, extended that olive branch to Jesse Ventura to sign the official legislation into law.
Is cool.
It's a really
and
good
they really are very sanctuary.
And
there's a reason that Ilhan Omar lives there. There's a reason for that, because Minnesota takes in and has in the past large amounts of immigrants. And so there is a very large Somali community there, and among others. And that's one of the things I like about Minnesota is they are very open.
They are. And that is a state that is what I would call the definition of progressive libertarianism. That is what that state is. Because they care about the least of these.
They're progressive left.
And they respect your privacy. They respect your right to personal freedom.
Yes.
That is a very unique state. And so I just want to say to Gal Brookings and Sam Stan, if you really want to see what Arnold is capable of doing, you don't want to mess with these muscles. So make sure you support Jesse Ventura's Retro Bakery. It seems like a great business, but also support Jen Perlman. She's a really great person. Get the give over there.
So, guys, Monday night we'll be here. Zach Shrewsbury from running for U.S. Senate in West Virginia. No, he comes from, I believe he's a mining family.
I think so. I think you're right about that.
Yeah. And to me, that's what you need. You need people that know their people to represent their people. It's always best that way.
With that said, we're very appreciative of all of you. Remember, the one thing that we can talk about, we can talk about our social media. Make sure that you guys are following us. Links are in the description. It is very important that you follow us, particularly on Twitter, on Instagram, and on TikTok. So make sure you're following us. And lots of great content that we're putting out there that I think you'll all like.
Yeah.
And the good news is that the handle is the same for all 3 channels. So make sure you do that, but make sure you smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those wonderful things we ask you to do. You don't like my music? Sable, Travers, Sam Stan, Sable Miner, Gail Brookings, Rendell Giovanetti, the Self-Care Maven, Colonello jumped on board, Steve Grossman,
Super Friday. Who's
Super Friday?
Danny
is a new person. Danny Wyndham. Great to see you as always.
Randall, you said Randall.
Yes, I did say Mr. Italian himself. I did say him.
I haven't seen Big Dumb Animal in a while.
No, we haven't had a huge crowd today, but we've had
It's an odd
AC 78. Thank you very much. Wild Vibes. I believe you're new. Welcome.
No, let me see. That's not she.
Wild?
Let me see. What did she say?
Wild Vibes. Just
okay.
Yeah, I didn't say anything else. Not that I'm aware of anyway.
I know who that is.
We have Dominic P. Thank you. Welcome to the channel. Let's see. Cheryl Wiles. Good to see you. UMPL, who was nice enough to order from Retro Bakery. We are very appreciative that you did that. That means a lot. Okay. That helps.
That's who that is.
I gotcha. I think that's about it. CHXWV, whatever that means. I see you around a lot. We're very happy to have you here.
It doesn't see. I would think it's like something West Virginia.
Tony D, thank you for checking in. Thank you all for checking in. It really means a lot. So with that said, share, like, subscribe.
We'll be back on Monday.
Monday, 9 p.m. We'll see you then.